Thanks for having me, Sandeep. Yeah, I currently had a security engagement for Prime Video, where I run a program that really works on advanced security controls for various parts of the business. Everything from infrastructure testing and availability around like DDoS bots and scraping, things like data classification and lineage, general like security engineering, AppSec, various kinds of control testing, really about supporting our developers in understanding how to scale security and understanding the controls in place and how they work.
Absolutely, Mike. Thank you so much for sharing that. Hi, everyone. Sandeep here, co-founder and CEO at Deepfence. Mike, thank you so much for making time for this one. Fourth webinar that we're doing in the series of, how top tech tier companies essentially, operationalize security at scale. I wanted to talk to you about how do you think cloud security products are going to evolve to have some of these features, like, be traffic analysis, why not? Or identity-centric detection response, or last time in the last webinar we did, we actually came up with a new thing couple of things called packet accurate detection response or syscall accurate detection response and stuff like that. I have that. I just wanted to put it forth, but we can discuss that later on how do you see cloud security products broadly evolving, what new features that they will sort of, assume or consume within this broader CNAPP category and stuff like that. But before that.
So I think, I would say that overall, I think if you look at the vendor space from like at least a customer perspective, there's a bunch of vendors that are all like 40% overlap, and then you 10% of all of them. But at the same time, you can't, you're just not going to bring in all these tools to solve 200 different things. You're gonna I think there's going to be a consolidation on features and a lot more platform solutions around cloud security. You talk about the APIs pushing back on, well, you can only scan inventory API so much because it's expensive and it's heavy. Like, how many tools do you really expect to be scanning APIs for all the same data? So I expect to see some collapsing in that area, right? I don't want to be paying for 5 different tools to ask for the same data.
Absolutely.
It just doesn't make sense. I think there's going to be, because it's getting easier and easier in some respects to see at the data layer, I expect to see a lot more prioritization and context around actual like data first security. I know that was a theme at RSA. This is, you're seeing big upswing in things like the DSPM market. Like, data security is going to be a big prioritization engine for businesses, and data at rest is one thing. Data at motion is a whole different beast, but people are going to want to solve that. Like you're going to want to know not only what data do I have, but what data is going to a third party, and like specifically what data, not just customer data or ad data or whatever the case may be, but specifically these elements go. And if it's a JSON blob, that's not always in the code. So you do need some real-time strategies to solve that. So that's kind of where my head's at. Did anywhere I could get more specific for you?
No, I think you touched upon 2 to 3 key things, Mike, and that's precisely how I look at it. But I think there are a couple more angles or a couple more specializations cloud security vendors will have, specifically CNAPP vendors with them. You have to choose. There is 40% overlap that you said, the table stakes, which is basically scanning, CSPM, vulnerability, malware, stuff like that, sure. And then you really start declaring your religion, saying that I'm a CNAPP, which is more focused on data, because I'm bringing in more context from, data, by enumerating live or using some sort of runtime techniques. And, that's one way to go about it. The second way, of course, is you can say, hey, you know what? I'm catering to mid-market. And most often what I see there is As a vendor, people, once they're done scanning their infrastructure, inventorying it, they're really looking at their cloud as a collection of applications that they need to protect. They also have another prism, like which you mentioned, which is collection of data stores that they need to protect, and of course, collection of identities for sure. But essentially, and then you decide, you know what, I'm going to address some of these attacks, which are very specific to applications or data specific. And hey, you know what? I'm going to do this on the network. That is my vantage point, really, right? Or I'm going to do this by putting a sensor in the actual cloud endpoint where I'm going to see deeper stuff, really. So this is how I absolutely agree with you. You have to, as a CNAPP vendor, you have to declare your religion, saying that I'm a CNAPP. Sure, I do 50%. 40%, 50%, 60% things similar to everyone else. But hey, you know what? This is where I go deeper. This is how my specialization is, really. And that also sort of solves a couple of problems for them, really, from a vendor point of view, really, right? In mid-market, you can say that, hey, I am the singular CNAPP because I'm taking care of day zero and day one needs, and not a day two solution. And when you're working with larger enterprises, they would anyway have multiple CNAPPs, data centric, data focused, app centric, app focused, and stuff like that, really, right? So that sort of computes in a broader positioning category as well. But broadly, yeah, I totally agree with you. How the evolution is going to happen in the space. I am personally excited about CNAPPs evolving and consuming some of the features from web application protection platforms. And this is really sort of a higher level, broad level statement I'm making here, really, because some of the things, for example, the DNS bit that you spoke about, hey, there is a command and control call happening, and API security products don't probably detect it because it's an egress communication. It's not even HTTP. So all of these features that are required, they're not there in CNAPPs, neither they are in WAPs. But some of these features that traditionally have been in these other players, they're going to come in, even in CNAPPs, really. And that's your specialization as a product, as a vendor, as a company, really, right? So I am sort of super excited about this next phase where people are looking beyond just scanners, looking beyond just CSPMs, and they're saying, hey, I'm giving you this attack paths, and here is how I arrived at it. And I think this is why it's important to you, because I'm bringing in this telemetry from network or apps or data, and and that not only prioritizes but also protects you from certain kind of attack vectors which are very specific to that particular piece I'm focused on, really. So absolutely, that would be the next step of evolution in CNAPPs. And you know what? I think I took a detour, and there is one more question that has come up, which I think is pretty interesting. The question, Mike, is to you. It says, given the needs of context to better prioritize and fix issues, can we now say that the debate is no more about agent versus agentless, but it is about context versus no context? That's the question, Mike, to you.
Yeah, I think that's a good way to describe it. I'm sure as I noodle on that more, I'd have some more ways to expand on that. Yeah. But as I think, right, as your infrastructure scales and as it's very big, everything needs to feed into some sort of prioritization engine, right? And I think it rehashes some of the things that we talked about. But the better you can make decisions faster, preferably automated, ideally automated, although you never reach 100%, right? That's what you want to strive for. I think agents have gotten easier than they've been in the past. Like one of the biggest challenges to agents, and this challenge did exist or still exists, it hasn't gone away, is I don't want to go install code everywhere and then have to maintain it and support it. And then you look at things like SolarWinds and it's a supply chain risk. There's a whole bunch of reasons people don't want to do agents. Now that being said, things at scale have got automation, and basically, automation and orchestration has matured a lot over the years, and it's a lot easier to manage those agents and update them and operate in an agent model versus an agentless model. Now, so I do see a lot to that question.
Absolutely, Mike. I completely agree with you. In fact, you know what? Agent versus agentless debate was really about operationalizing some of these basic controls. And agentless was easier. Sure, it solved that problem, but it never solved the other bit, which was the depth that you needed. And I think it's sort of a foregone conclusion now that you always needed both. That debate just wasn't about accuracy, depth, or all of that stuff. Really, it was mostly about what is easy to deploy. Can I get my first check marks done quickly? It was never about depth. It was mostly about operationalizing basic controls in place. You've done that. You need depth now. You need deeper, telemetry. You need actual runtime security and stuff like that. Really, right? So that's how I always looked at it, Mike.
Yeah, that's good. I'd say that agents are providing a lot more value than I would say some of the times they did in the past. I think of, like, I was doing an endpoint project forever ago, and this was before the FireEye days, where the average, I want to say, right, like FireEye stats at the time, where the average antivirus was somewhere around like 15% effective.
Yeah.
So, right, that's a lot of work, and that's really expensive to run agents for 15% effectiveness as a security control. So what do? The other thing that's really changed is, while trust boundaries and network boundaries are more clear, it's a lot harder to choke the traffic. Like, it used to be just put a firewall in front of it, and then the firewalls got really smart. So you got things like, the old checkpoints that, could identify sort of traffic, and then Palo Alto revisited it with, hey, we're going to actually make sure it's clear HTTP coming over the, if this firewall rule says HTTP, we're going to make sure it's HTTP. Yeah. But and that's provided a lot of value, because business logic could align with technical logic. You could have security engineers talk to a business person, go, I don't need port 80 open both directions. I just need HTTP to this server. Right. And that's kind of what that application centric on the wire approach solved. But what's happened is that network choke has gotten highly distributed. Because highly distributed, and you can't easily guarantee those flow paths. So without that, right, like agents, my view is agents are kind of the model to help solve that problem.
Absolutely. And you absolutely put it correctly, which is, hey, you're no longer putting kernel modules, you're no longer putting proxies. They are not in code agents. It's all eBPF, and it's easy. It's already there. All you're doing is going and programming it, fetching all the deeper telemetry that just makes everything more easier to detect and protect. Really, yeah. So it makes total sense. Okay.
Listen to the full webinar at deepfence.io/resources.